Dumelang mangwanani mwalelepo vukenjani teklas vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening in the SADC region and beyond. My name is Ashwin Mberi, and today is Human Rights Day. Ever so often, a thing comes to pass that is of such astounding importance that we must stand up and recognize it. We must place this thing on a pedestal it deserves and ensure that the precepts and policies put in place by it are adhered to, appreciated, and spread as far as the human voice will carry. Such is the sort of message sent by Human Rights Day. Human Rights Day is observed every year on 10 December, the day the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. The UDHR is a milestone document which proclaims the inalienable rights that everyone is entitled to as a human being, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, language, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Available in more than 500 languages, it is the most translated document in the world. Now, about human rights, Eleanor Roosevelt said, "Where after all do human rights, universal human rights, begin? In small places close to home, so close and so small they cannot be seen on any of the maps of the world. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Without concerted citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world." This year's Human Rights Day theme relates to equality and Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Here's a video on Human Rights Day. Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. Here are today's top stories. Transmissible than any previous variant, but that symptoms may be less severe with lower levels of hospitalization, especially in vaccinated patients. President Cyril Ramaphosa was due to meet with senior officials in charge of the COVID-19 response this week and will decide on whether to tighten low-level lockdown restrictions. That seems unlikely as hospital capacity is far from being overwhelmed as it was in previous waves. South African health regulator SAPRA on Wednesday approved a third or booster shot of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for adults and children over the age of 12 years. In our second story, Ethiopia's Tigray conflict threatens to break the country apart. After more than a year of war in Tigray, Ethiopia's ethnic divides now run deeper than ever. This will make it hard for the country to heal if peace ever comes. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power in 2018 on the back of widespread protests, especially by ethnic Oromos. They initially had high hopes for Abiy because of his mixed Oromo and Amharic parentage. But the Oromos, the nation's largest ethnic group, who make up some 35% of Ethiopia's population, now feel neglected by Abiy, who is seen as aligning himself with Amhara elites. As for the TPLF, they used to be generally despised before the conflict broke out because of the corruption and repression of the TPLF-led coalition that had dominated Ethiopia's politics for the 27 years before Abiy's appointment. Atlantic Council researcher Cameron Hudson, a former diplomat in the Horn of Africa region, believes Abiy has too much blood on his hands to continue to govern Ethiopia, even if he manages to end the conflict. A number of conflict experts believe Ethiopia will need to initially establish a transitional, multi-ethnic and ethnically balanced government. In our next story, has the COVID-19 pandemic amplified insecurity in the Sahel? The Sahel is reeling under escalating Islamist attacks. A major reason for the expansion of extremist Islamic groups in the Sahel, the vast semi-arid strip wedged between the Sahara to the north and the tropical savannas to the south, is the limited capacities of the national armies operating there, says retired Senegalese General Babacar Gaye. African heads of state meeting earlier this week at the Dakar Forum for Peace and Security called for easier access to international funding and stronger strategic support to combat Islamist groups. Security expert Paul Simon Handy from the Africa-based Institute for Security Studies sees a link between the growing extremist threat and coronavirus pandemic. According to Handy, the pandemic could prove beneficial in the long term for countries on the continent. For African countries, it was a huge shock to see how much Western countries played it selfish in terms of the management of vaccine stocks, he explained. But maybe this is exactly what African countries needed to realize that they have to find solutions to their own problems without relying too much on partnerships or external actors. One example of this can already be seen in Mozambique's northern Cabo Delgado region, where troops from Rwanda as well as from Southern African Development Community countries such as Botswana, Tanzania, and South Africa are helping fight extremists linked to the so-called Islamic State. In our next story, Libyan political body calls for election delay as disputes grow. A Libyan political body on Wednesday called for a 24 December presidential election to be delayed to February amid growing jostling over the rules and legal basis of a vote aimed at ending a decade of instability. Despite the 2015 political agreement that enshrined a legislative role for the HOR and an advisory role for the HSC, they do not formally recognize each other, though they have held sporadic peace negotiations in Morocco. Some Libyans fear the disputes over the current election process could trigger a similar crisis to that surrounding the 2014 vote, when Libya split between warring eastern and western factions with parallel administrations in Tripoli and Benghazi. Laws issued in September and October by HOR Speaker Anguilla Saleh, a presidential candidate, set a first-round presidential vote for 24 December, but delayed the parliamentary vote. Saleh's critics accuse him of issuing the laws without a quorum or a proper vote in parliament and after intimidation against some members. Saleh and his allies deny wrongdoing and say the laws were passed properly. In our next story, 7 UN peacekeepers killed in latest Mali attack. On Wednesday morning, 7 UN peacekeepers from Togo died and 3 others were seriously injured when their vehicle hit an improvised explosive device in the Bandai Giara region in central Mali. Spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said the UN chief offered his sincere condolences to the families of the victims, as well as to the government and people of Togo, and wished a full recovery to all those who were injured. The Secretary General also calls on the Malian authorities to spare no effort in identifying the perpetrators of this attack so that they can be brought to justice, Mr. Dujarric said. In a tweet, the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, noted that African peacekeepers came to support a country and the people in their region. These crimes must not go unpunished, he added. Also on Wednesday, the spokesperson confirmed that a peacekeeper from Egypt died on Monday in hospital after succumbing to injuries he suffered during an attack in northern Mali. In our next story, UN suspends food distribution to 2 towns in Ethiopia after looting. The World Health Food Programme has suspended food distribution in Ethiopia's Kombolcha and Dessie towns after looting of supplies that staff were unable to stop due to intimidation, including being held at gunpoint, the United Nations said on Wednesday. UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric said a large quantity of humanitarian food supplies, including nutritional items for malnourished children, was stolen and looted. The small-scale theft of food escalated into mass looting of warehouses across Kombolcha in recent days, reportedly by elements of the Tigrayan forces and some members of the local population, Dujarric told reporters. The WFP trucks used for humanitarian operations in Amhara were commandeered by military personnel and used for their own purposes this week, Dujarric said. He called for all parties to the conflict to respect and protect humanitarian relief personnel. The year-long war between the federal government and the leadership of the northern region of Tigray has killed thousands of civilians and forced millions to flee their homes. In our next story, WHO and Global Fund warn inequalities block progress towards ending AIDS, TB, and malaria. Inequities have been widely acknowledged as barriers to achieving global and national goals and targets in HIV, TB, and malaria programs. Until those inequalities are better identified and their consequences better understood, it will be hard for programs to meet people's real health needs. Now, for the first time, a new report from the World Health Organization and the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria systemically assesses the global state of inequality, HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria. Pandemics thrive on inequalities and exacerbate iniquities. We have learned this with HIV, TB, and malaria, and we have seen it again with COVID-19, said Peter Sands, Executive Director of the Global Fund. To tackle the iniquities, we must go beyond simple notions of equal access or one-size-fits-all and deliberately create compensating inequalities in service provision to focus resources on the most vulnerable. Since 2002, the Global Fund has disbursed more than $50 billion across more than 155 countries to help communities most in need. In our next story, UN Emergency Response Fund provides spark of hope for shared humanity. Fast and flexible, the Central Emergency Response Fund was set up to promote swift, coordinated action in humanitarian crisis, the UN Emergency Relief Coordinator told a high-level pledging event on Wednesday, adding it has more than fulfilled its mission. Marking CERF's 15th anniversary, the event aimed to galvanize commitments to continue to meet increasingly complex levels of humanitarian needs. Mr. Griffiths said the rapid response capability meant humanitarian organizations can swing into action as soon as emergencies strike. He described CERF as a proven success story because it is constantly evolving, applying lessons learned and embracing innovation in response to ever more complex intertwined global risks. Last year, it helped close to 69 million people, twice as many as the year before, many of whom were reeling from the coronavirus pandemic. CERF is a spark of hope in a difficult, shadowed world. Let us light that spark for the sake of our shared humanity, concluded Mr. Griffiths. In our next story, coral reefs off East Africa could die out in 50 years. Coral reefs in Western Indian Ocean are at risk of extinction by 2070 due to warming temperatures and overfishing, according to a new study. A roughly 12,000 square kilometers expanse of coral reefs stretching down the eastern coastline of Africa and around Madagascar is facing ecosystem collapse, threatening a range of species and the livelihoods of over 1 million people who work in the fishing and tourism industries. Published in the journal Nature Sustainability, the study found warming temperatures to be the main driver, especially in the region's island nations like Seychelles, while unsustainable fishing practices were the main culprit near the mainland. Environmentalists have called for governments around the world to step up marine protection and abolish subsidies for the fishing industry, which they say have depleted wild fish stocks and pushed marine ecosystems to the brink of collapse. Now, in the last of our top stories, Congo Basin, Jeff Bezos awards $40 million for nature conservation. The race towards the 30-30 goal, the proposed new global agreement for biodiversity, seems to have already begun in the Congo Basin. The Wildlife Conservation Society has just received a $40 million grant from the Bezos Earth Fund to step up its conservation missions in the world's second largest forest. The Wildlife Conservation Society's missions will be re-energized in the Congo Basin. The US-based non-governmental organization, whose goal is to preserve nature around the world and particularly in Africa, is receiving a $40 million grant to intensify its conservation missions in the Congo Basin. In addition, the Bezos Earth Fund is one of 9 private founders who have pledged $5 billion to protect and conserve 30% of the planet by 2030, also known as 30-30. This goal was debated on September 30, 2020 as part of the 75th period of regular sessions of the United Nations General Assembly. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories right here on Africa Good Morning. We have so much more for you. After the break, we'll be talking to Jovial Rantao, who is the chairperson of the African Editors Forum. Stick around.
Win instant cash this spring with Top Score Instant. To enter, buy any new pack of Top Score Instant 1 kg or 500 grams from any store countrywide and stand a chance to win one of 2 grand prizes of $20,000 Namibian or one of 12 weekly prizes of $5,000 Namibian. SMS Instant to 24442. Competition ends 30 November 2021. T's and C's apply. Top Score Instant, a proud product of Namib Mills.
Jovial Rantao is the chairperson of the African Editors Forum. He has amassed experience in the media industry over decades and was the founding editor of the African Independent, editor of the Sunday Independent, editor of the Sunday Tribune, and deputy editor of The Star. He is at the forefront of the fight for media independence. Welcome to our show, Mr. Jovial Rantao. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the show. Can you hear me? Mr. Rantao, can you hear me, sir? All right, it seems like we're having a bit of an issue connecting to Mr. Rantao. We'll give it another shot after this break.
Strike it gold and win $5,000 Namibian in cash with Neo Paints. Simply buy Neo Paints products from the selected range and stand a chance to get one of 12 mystery buckets filled with gold paint. All 12 winners will each get 3 extra paint buckets equal to their purchase. One to replace the gold paint, the second to use on your project, and the third to give to a charity of their choice. One winner can score another $10,000 Namibian by showing us your creative use of the golden paint. The best project wins the cash. Offer is valid from 27 September to 18 December at your favorite hardware store nationwide. Visit us at neopaints.com for more competition details and follow us on Facebook for weekly competition updates. Neo Paints, a coat of excellence.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Let's try once again to cross over to Mr. Jovial Rantao, who is the chairperson of the African Editors Forum. Good morning, sir. How are you? Good morning, Mr. Rantao. How are you, sir? Mr. Rantao, can you hear me, sir? All right, we were certainly looking forward to having that conversation. It seems like we have some issues, so we're going to move on to the next thing on our program. Claudine Kluter, Senior Conservation Scientist at the Etosha Ecological Institute, speaks about the role that technology has played in collection in the country's national parks. The Etosha Ecological Institute is an organization within Namibia's Environment and Tourism Ministry that manages all research activities within the Etosha National Park. Let's have a look.
Of wealth of knowledge here, a lot of stuff paper-based still. The knowledge that we generate by monitoring, getting the information in, that's on a database it's accessible to us currently, but anybody who is working on something, for instance rainfall data that we collect annually, as well as from so we've got seasonal rain gauges out in the park, or over 160 something rain gauges, but then we also collect from the stations that we have on a database. So if anybody's interested in that data, they can approach us, we give it out, depending on what they use it for, obviously. But then we've started with the process, especially now with the carnivore project. We wanted to see what has been done on carnivores in Etosha and the surroundings since, historic times. And these were all paper-based reports conducted or compiled internally by park managers, by scientists in the past. So we've now digitized that, and that we've given to the EIS, and it should be up soon. I haven't checked recently, but it should be up already. So we're trying to make all the information that we have here that's on paper, locked up in cabinets and so on, we're trying to make that easily available to the wider community. But obviously, if there are people out there who are interested in conducting research in the Etosha environment, we are open to emails and whatnot, and they can always request certain things if we are easily able to extract the information that they need. SMART stands for Spatial Monitoring and Reporting Tool. So it's basically an easier way of collecting data, whether it's normal patrol data or whether you use it for surveys and so on. In the past we used to do the entire northeastern parks, and this year it was established in Waterberg. So what SMART does is, the database is entirely your own. You have it for your specific needs. You will say what you want to monitor, whether it's your priority species. For us, of course, it's our lion, elephant, rhino. You can record your mortalities, but the main thing is you'll be able to easily visualize where your teams went out, how much did they cover per month, per quarter, per year. It has an inbuilt reporting function. So no more do the rangers have to sit and write long reports and not actually know where they've been or what they've done. So because of that, it's at a click of a button. Your report is generated with maps, with figures, with tables, everything that the managers need. That is then sent out, going further. The idea is to have all national parks using the system, and then having a unit at head office that can easily extract the information and generate this big report that monthly has to go to the director and then further up. So it really is to simplify the rangers' work, the people actually collecting the data, simplifying the warden's work, compiling these reports at the stations, and then further up. SMART is not only for Namibia, specific to Namibia. Currently, I think almost 1,000 sites worldwide, of which about 17, 18 countries have a national mandate for it. Namibia is one of those countries that has a national mandate for SMART because it's written in our guidelines for monitoring in protected areas. So it's really an incredibly powerful tool. It's free of charge. Training and support is also free. It's for the next, I think, 30 to 50 years, I think it's going to be free. It's 9 NGOs that have really dedicated themselves for this to work, helping improve conservation and management of protected areas. The initial setup of the database and all of it, that's a bit technical, so you really need intense training. But for rangers collecting data, I think we've spent in the northeastern parks maybe 3 to 4 days with rangers actively going on patrols and showing them how to collect the data. I think one of the oldest people that we actually have an assistant ranger in Mudumu who's running SMART. Not the warden, not the ranger, an assistant ranger who's using it. And for the system to work as a whole, you really need champions. So in each park we have got a person who's really spearheading it and driving it, just so that everybody feels motivated, and you've got that person behind you asking, did you take your device? I need to download.
Africa, good morning. We're going to try once again to get a hold of Mr. Jovia Rantao, who is the chairperson of the African Editors Forum. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's wonderful to finally have you on the show. So could you kindly introduce...
Sustain life. An abundant ocean can feed 1 billion people a healthy meal every day forever. But now they are being killed by throwaway plastics. The equivalent of 1 garbage truck of plastic is dumped in the sea every minute. 17.6 billion pounds every year. Plastic is everywhere in our ocean, floating on the surface, mixing in the salt water, and sitting on the ocean bottom, miles and miles deep. And once in the ocean, it never goes away. Over hundreds of years, it breaks down into small pieces. But those pieces, even the tiny ones called microplastics, are still plastic. Sea turtles are choking on it. Scientists say that over 60% of whale and dolphin species are affected by it. Zooplankton, the base of the ocean food chain, eat it. And so do we. It's in the water we drink. It's in our food. Microplastics have been found in our salt, our honey, and our beer. And sometimes even in the air we breathe. Companies are choosing to make something that will be used just once, from a material that lasts forever. If you don't like what throwaway plastics are already doing to our world, brace yourself. We face a tsunami of throwaway plastic in our and the ocean's future. 4 times more plastic will be produced between now and the middle of the century than has been produced in all of history. 4 times more. What can we do? Recycling? Of all the plastic ever generated as of 2015, only 9% was recycled. Even when it is recycled, plastic degrades. Your plastic soda bottle maybe becomes a shampoo bottle, then a floor mat. Even in the best case, it doesn't recycle, it downcycles. And then it becomes pollution that ruins our beaches and chokes sea animals forever. We should not be forced to pollute the ocean every time we eat, drink, or go shopping. We need to be given a choice, a plastic-free choice. This is not hard to imagine. Indeed, some responsible companies are already leading the way. There are throwaway plastic-free aisles in supermarkets. Beverage companies already offer plastic-free soda and salsa water. Restaurants offer plastic-free service. There are plastic-free rooms in hotels. An airline is now offering a plastic-free flight. And Oceania and our allies are winning plastic-free victories. Following campaigning by Oceania, Peru passed a law that keeps plastic out of national parks and beaches. Belize is getting rid of styrofoam. And the European Union has mandated reductions for throwaway plastic throughout its 28 member countries. But with your help, we can do more. Together, we can create a movement to reduce throwaway plastic. We can make sure we're all given real plastic-free choices. We can help our cities, towns, schools, and workplaces establish zones that are free of throwaway plastic. Let's stop plastic pollution from wrecking our beaches and our oceans, and have healthy oceans that delight and sustain us for generations to come. Please join our campaign. Go to oceana.org/plastics today.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Something we all hope can stay with us throughout the day is good weather. Let's have a look at the forecast up next.
You okay? You need a minute? Cool. Okay. Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about extinction. And let me tell you, and you'd kind of think this would be obvious, going extinct is a bad thing. And driving yourselves extinct? In 70 million years, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. At least we had an asteroid. What's your excuse? You're headed for a climate disaster, and yet every year governments spend hundreds of billions of public funds on fossil fuel subsidies. Imagine if we had spent hundreds of billions per year subsidizing giant meteors. That's what you're doing right now. Think of all the other things you could do with that money. Around the world, people are living in poverty. Don't you think helping them would make more sense than, I don't know, paying for the demise of your entire species? Let me be real for a second. You've got a huge opportunity right now. As you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic, this is humanity's big chance. So here's my wild idea. Don't choose extinction. Save your species before it's too late. It's time for you humans to stop making excuses and start making changes. Thank you.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. It is unfortunate we couldn't have that conversation with Jovia Rantao, who is the chairperson of the African Editors Forum, but we certainly can make sure that that conversation will happen next week. But right now, let's get straight into our economic news stories. In the first story, South Africa's Eskom asks for 20.5% power tariff hike next year. South Africa's struggling state-owned power utility Eskom has applied for a 20.5% electricity tariff increase for the financial year that starts on 1 April 2022, it said on Wednesday. Energy regulator NERSA rarely grants Eskom the full amount it applies for, but the size of the latest request means electricity users in Africa's most industrialized economy could face much larger power bills next year. NERSA has to make a decision on the application by 25 February 2022. The High Court ruled earlier this month following a dispute between the two parties. Eskom argues that NERSA has not allowed it to recoup sufficient revenue via electricity tariffs and says that it is one of the reasons why it is dependent on government bailouts. In our next story, Congo, an economic bright spot in Africa, says IMF chief. Democratic Republic of Congo is a rare bright spot in Africa's economic performance as high commodity prices and government reform improve finances, the head of the International Monetary Fund said on Wednesday. Congo's economy is expected to grow 5.4% this year, with 6.4% in 2022. Kristalina Georgieva told a news conference in Kinshasa after meeting Congo President Felix Tshisekedi. The country is Africa's top producer of copper and the world's leading miner of cobalt, used in the making of electric car batteries. But chronic corruption, mismanagement, and conflict have stunted output and left the vast majority of the country in poverty. Georgieva said the world economy is recovering from the worst impacts of the coronavirus pandemic, but has lost a bit of momentum with the United States and China slowing down. In our next story, SADC gears up for largest entrepreneurship gathering. Startup SADC, the largest entrepreneurship gathering in the Southern African region, will host a convention in South Africa's Sun City in early March. The event is created to serve as a networking platform, access to venture capital and cross-collaboration for startups, as well as small, medium enterprises in the region. Namibian coordinator for Startup SADC, Zined Salih, told the Namibian yesterday. Salih said the conference will take place annually and the aim is to eventually host it in other countries in the region. Salih emphasized that Startup SADC is a conducive platform for both entrepreneurs and corporate companies in the region to work together in developing the SME sector. Salih said the conference is a deliberate intervention that seeks to promote action-driven solutions to solve Southern Africa's most pressing issues through constructive dialogue and solution provision and ultimately implementation. Attending entrepreneurs will have an opportunity to broaden their markets and have a unique opportunity of attracting investments for their ventures, Salih emphasized. About 200 entrepreneurs are expected to attend the gathering. Attendees should present a negative test for COVID-19. In the last of our economic news stories, Africa Free Trade Pact could counter COVID-19 impact on growth, UN says. Commerce under the African Continental Free Trade Area that started 1 January 2021 could reduce coronavirus-induced economic contractions and spur sustainable and inclusive growth on the continent if stronger support measures targeting women, young traders, and small businesses are implemented, according to a United Nations report. Such measures should include introducing affirmative action initiatives in public procurement for marginalized groups and prioritizing support for industries in which trade reforms would have the greatest potential for inclusiveness, the UN Conference on Trade Development said. All but one of 55 nations recognized by the African Union have signed to join the AFCFTA, and more than two-thirds have ratified the accord. Eritrea, which has largely closed economy, is the holdout. If the opportunity can be adequately tapped and the potential through the AFCFTA realized, you can build greater resilience to the impact of economic shocks and foster deeper cooperation on regional trade. All right, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Up next, economic indicators. Now, one of the most anticipated Formula One races of our time will be happening this Sunday on Abu Dhabi, with Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen virtually in some way or the other squaring off, with the winner taking all. To give us this and the rest of today's sports news, and of course the news leading us into the weekend, is Ari Hochad. Good morning, Ari. Do take it away.
Yes, good morning. It is a very exciting Formula One season that comes to an end, and that will be on Sunday. It is going to be the final race. You have 21 races. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton exact the same points, and it's all rushed on Sunday. And Sunday is it is a race that recent they've made some changes, and for looking forward to
It seems like we are having issues with talking to Ari. It seems like that good weather we hoped for is not necessarily there for everyone. But let me go down the sports stories that Ari was taking us through. Like we said before, Formula One, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton will be battling it out with everything to win in Abu Dhabi this Sunday. And in cycling, if you're in Windhoek, you should be excited because the annual Nedbank Desert Clash cycle race starts today in Windhoek. And in football, English Premier League continue with log leaders Manchester City at home to Wolverhampton. And in cricket, Australia hosts England in the first Ashes test in Brisbane. Needless to say, you're going to have a fantastic weekend, especially after today's Human Rights Day. Do enjoy all the sports that's on to offer. This is Still Africa. Good morning. We'll bring you your headlines after the break.
There are many global policies in place that governments have committed to prevent and respond to violence against women and girls. Since 1979, for example, we have the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. At regional level, we also have several conventions that set the stage for what governments need to do. For example, the Istanbul Convention for Europe, the Maputo Protocol for Africa, Belém do Pará for Latin America and the Caribbean. All of these protocols and conventions, they set the stage for what national governments should do in terms of legislation, policies, and things that need to be put in place to adequately respond and prevent violence. Now, the big challenge is making sure these commitments become a reality.
We've had a few technical interruptions, but thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning, as we have still been delivering you all the urgent and happening news, current affairs, of course, in the Southern African region and beyond. Let's have a look at the headlines from today's top stories. South Africa reports nearly 20,000 COVID-19 cases, an Omicron wave record. Ethiopia's Tigray conflict threatens to break country apart. Has the COVID pandemic amplified insecurity in the Sahel? Libyan political body calls for election delay as disputes grow. South Africa's Eskom asks for 20.5% power tariff hike next year. In Formula One motor racing, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen can both still win the championship with the last race of the season at Abu Dhabi on Sunday. Those have been our stories. Thank you very much for joining us on Africa Good Morning, your reliable source for all the news happening in Africa and beyond. Do get in touch with us on AGM_2 cents worth at nmh.com.na. Would love to know your thoughts. Catch up with us on Facebook and Twitter on Africa Good Morning. Make sure that you sanitize. Put those masks on. As you can see, the Omicron variant is all over the place. We really need to take care of each other. And most importantly, let's get vaccinated. From me, Ashwin Berry, I would like to wish you a fantastic Human Rights Day. I'll see you on Monday.